We are continuing to track everything having to do with the case against Jeffrey Epstein, as I want to read some of the latest reporting courtesy of the Associated Press. Newly disclosed U.S. government files on Epstein have prompted the resignation of a top official in Slovakia and revived calls in Britain for a former prince to share what he knows with authorities about Epstein's links to powerful individuals around the world. The fallout comes just a day after the Justice Department began releasing a massive trove of files that offers more details about Epstein's interactions with the rich and famous after he served time for sex crimes in Florida. Joining us now to break it all down is Eric Tucker. He is a reporter with the Associated Press, and he is also involved in dissecting all of these files, millions of them. Eric, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's just start with the basics then. What new information do we know from this latest release?
So if you think back to the document released from last month, the headline really centered on photographs that we saw of former President Bill Clinton. This time around, I think what we're really seeing is that Epstein had a variety of associations with all sorts of other prominent figures in business, philanthropic, and social circles, including in New York City. So we saw a lot of emails and text messages concerning his friendships or associations with people like Elon Musk, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and even the co-owner of the New York Giants, Steve Tisch. And we're really seeing from this correspondence frequent back and forth, and really a reflection that Jeffrey Epstein was somebody who was well known in sort of high society New York.
So you've just named a few really high profile names within this first answer. So Eric, the next question would be, do any of these records indicate any criminal wrongdoing by anyone that has been named here, specifically the new names that you have talked about?
No, we don't have any indication through these records of any sort of untoward behavior, any kind of allegations that were deemed to be potentially criminal. And in fact, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has said as recently as this morning that the Justice Department has reviewed basically everything and has determined that there's no basis for any additional criminal investigation or charge. I would say one sort of interesting element that we're continuing to learn about is former Prince Andrew, who the Justice Department in 2020 had actually sought to interview as part of an investigation. And there are now renewed calls, as you mentioned earlier, including from the Prime Minister of Britain, for the former Prince Andrew to reveal to American investigators whatever he may have known about Epstein's activities.
So now that we are getting some more of this information, I think it was about 3 million pages. We mentioned it right off the top. So we have a lot of documents here. I'm wondering, is this the entire batch of files that we have, or are we expecting several more pages of documents to come out?
We are not expecting more documents to come out, but it's worth noting that the Justice Department has made clear that they did collect all sorts of additional records that are deemed not fit for release. And so there are a lot of redactions of photographs and names that I think we're never going to necessarily see. We're hearing already from members of Congress that they're not entirely satisfied with the document releases. Epstein's victims as well have contended that there's more that needs to come out. But from the Justice Department perspective, the sense that we got on Friday from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is that this is really it, and they're not anticipating additional big tranches of disclosures.
So I think it's important now to talk about why so many of these pages were initially withheld and why the timeline has worked out this way.
So that's a great question. You know, we were under the impression, I think, collectively in the public last month that the Justice Department, of course, it was required to under law, was going to provide by December 19th the entire trove of Epstein documents. They subsequently said that they had identified millions more that for whatever reason they had not earlier seen. And they said that was going to require weeks to go through and redact and make sure that no additional information was revealed that could identify potential victims. And so I think that caught the public, including journalists, by surprise from people who thought that the Justice Department was going to be complying with this law that required it by December 19th to release all these records. The Justice Department said, frankly, it was doing its best and that the need for diligence and a thorough review trumped whatever obligation it had to sort of reveal everything all at once.
I want to refer now to a social media post courtesy of Reuters. So take a look at this. We aired out some of these comments. He was speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One. But this post says U.S. President Donald Trump said that newly released Justice Department files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein cleared him of any wrongdoing. So in terms of where President Trump lands within the entirety of these files that we have seen that have been released by the DOJ, where does the president stand within this case?
There's really been no evidence from the release of the files of any sort of significant or substantive or really corroborated allegations. One of the things against the president, I mean, and one of the things that I think that, we did see from this latest tranche is that the FBI did catalog a variety of various allegations and claims that have been made by different women who purported to allege some sort of wrongdoing by President Trump. We've heard now Top Blanche say that they don't have any indication that any of those were true or valid accusations. And so I imagine that that's what President Trump is referring to, that there's no indication that there's anything in here that will require additional investigation of him.
I think it would be worth also noting to the viewers and just explaining, again, with millions of pages of files that have to be reviewed. I mean, what is the process there when we have reporters kind of digging into all of this? How does that work? Where do you even start?
Yeah, it's been a really, difficult, cumbersome process. And I think that, a responsible read of these records means that just because something is cataloged in some way, just because somebody says something to law enforcement about somebody, does not mean that that's the truth. So one of the things that really comes through in these records is that they collected and cataloged basically whatever was presented to them, whether or not it was true or not. And oftentimes there's no indication there was any follow-up to determine that it was true. And so I think that requires a degree of careful reporting and scrutiny as the public is going through it, as the media is going through it, to make sure that kind of context is made clear. Obviously, the emails and the correspondence do speak for themselves in a certain sense, although we can't always know from the records what additional follow-up communication or travel might have occurred. But we do know that there were invitations from Jeffrey Epstein to significant prominent people to his island, for instance. But oftentimes it's not clear what happened after that.
Speaking of this correspondence, Eric, in your detailing of this and reading all of these files, is there any correspondence that stood out to you or surprised you the most?
I think there were names in here that we had not really seen, or names, to the extent that we knew that, there was a connection that we might not have known sort of the specific and substance of it. Steve Bannon, for instance, really comes through as somebody who had a significant relationship, friendship really with Jeffrey Epstein in the months before Epstein died in New York. And so you see a lot of back and forth there. I think that was notable. Steve Tisch is a co-owner of the New York Giants, and we sort of see that Epstein was involved in kind of scouting women. Tisch, for his part, has issued a statement saying that he would email about adult women and other topics with Jeffrey Epstein, and that it's an association that he deeply regrets.
And then when we talk about the fact that also, I mean, this is going to be the last batch of files that we are expecting to receive, at least so far, are there any follow-up stories that you are monitoring with this, or any leads that investigators may be following up on?
I think obviously the full review of all these records is going to continue for days, I imagine, from both the public and the media. So that's not complete. So we don't necessarily have a full sense of what hasn't yet been reviewed. And as for law enforcement, we're not clear, frankly, that there are additional investigations at all into anyone else that are underway. Jeffrey Epstein's confidant, Ghislaine Maxwell, was recently moved to a federal prison camp. She's serving a 20-year sentence for conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein. Other than that, though, we have no indication that these records are prompting any kind of new scrutiny.
Eric, before I let you go, I have to ask, is there anything that you think that people aren't focused on enough when we talk about these documents? Because there was this fascination with getting their hands on these documents, getting to all the evidence just to, uncover something within this entire Epstein case. But is there something that has gone overlooked, perhaps, as someone who has really focused on this reporting?
I think one of the things that I think really stands out is that there's been so much focus on Epstein and Trump and Epstein and Bill Clinton as sort of a current and a former president. And that's valid. But I do think it's sort of notable that Jeffrey Epstein was somebody who had a lot of friends and a wide social circle. And so there's a lot of information in here about a variety of people. So to a certain extent, it sort of misses the boat or the point to sort of link it exclusively to the current president or the former president, Bill Clinton. There are a lot of people who Jeffrey Epstein emailed with, communicated with, was friends with, and that sort of has been a major driving storyline from these documents.
Harry Tucker, a reporter with the Associated Press who has focused on dissecting all of these documents. You've written several articles regarding them on the AP. We appreciate your time here at Live Now from Fox to break it all down. And it may be the last batch of files that we get from the DOJ, but it might not be the last time that we talk about this story. So we look forward to checking in with you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. We're going